Hello! In this video we're going to analyze some biotech stocks of companies that will present scientific results in 2025 and importantly have enough cash on hand so they won't need to dilute our shares by stock offerings. Stay tuned, we are starting this Taxi! Welcome to Taxi Biotech, a show to keep up with the latest news and updates from the world of biotechnology and to learn about its impact on the stock market. The stock data I present here is just a reflection on how companies or the clinical trials are progressing and does not constitute any investment recommendation. This is purely for entertainment. On X, I did a daily breakdown of almost every Q1 2025 financial report. From that, I created this summary focusing on companies with enough cash to fund their research at least through 2027 and those that will release important research results during 2025. Today, I'll analyze the ones I personally find the most interesting. No investment advice, as always. Let's go! Let's start with Crinetics. They report they have enough cash to continue their current research until 2029. That's excellent. They've also announced a key date, September 25, when the FDA will decide whether or not to approve their treatment for acromegaly. Moreover, on June 26, they'll give a presentation sharing scientific data on their most promising early-stage molecules. Let's break it down. Here's their pipeline, and on the 26th, they'll talk about these early-stage molecules. We have no idea what they'll say, but since they are still in preclinical stages, I doubt there will be any negative surprises. They might even announce plans to request FDA approval to begin clinical trials for one of them. That's just a speculation, but that's what I'm guessing. So that date shouldn't be negative, it might even be positive. And now let's talk about the FDA approval date for Crinetics' most advanced drug for acromegaly here in Phase 3. March 19th of last year, they released Phase 3 trial results for this treatment. 56% of patients respond effectively, and the primary endpoint was met. That's not an extremely high percentage, but I've looked into currently available molecules on the market, and this is similar to their efficacy. What's great about Crinetics' drug is that it's oral, while all of its competitors require injections, which is always harder to manage for both patients and doctors. An oral option is always preferable. This gives Crinetics a competitive advantage. In the days following the data release, the stock jumped around 30%, which tells us the market considers the data strong. However, acromegaly is not a widespread disease, but the top-selling drug in this category generates $3 billion in annual sales. Crinetics could take a good slice of that market. And if we look at Crinetics' valuation here, we can see it's already at $3 billion. That might be the biggest red flag I'd highlight here. It already has a very large market cap. Additionally, looking at the chart, we can also see a step drop over 30% here in January 10th, when they release Phase 2 data for another of their investigational molecules, this time for adrenal hyperplasia. We are not expecting any further data from that study in the coming weeks, so it shouldn't affect the stock price in the short term. So in summary, Crinetics has enough cash to avoid needing a stock offering. The market sees solid results in their molecule. We might get a good data in research call this month and no other clinical trial results are expected. In addition, acromegaly represents a $3 billion market. Now let's move on to ASMB, which said they expect interim Phase 1 data towards the end of 2025. We also saw that they had enough cash on hand to fund operations until mid-2027 at their current burn rate. The upcoming data will relate to their investigational treatments for recurrent genital herpes, and if we look at their April 9th press release, they shared some information on this drug, but only regarding pharmacokinetics. Additionally, here that no grade 3 or grade 4 adverse effects had occurred. That's important, but we still don't know anything about efficacy. Additionally, they had said something similar back on September 23rd of last year. How did the stock react on those two announcements? Well, quite differently. On September 23rd, the stock fell 25%, even though they announced good pharmacokinetic data. And they showed the drug stay in the body for 20 days, quite good. However, after April 9th press release, again with similar information, plus the note about no serious side effects, the stock skyrocketed over 90% in the following weeks. So, as for efficacy, we are still in the dark. This is just phase 1, and this will be interim result. The stock has now returned to its pre-announced levels from the pharmacokinetics news, and any future movements will likely depend on those efficacy results. Next is Capricor Therapeutics, which said in their quarterly report that they have enough cash to operate through 2027 and reminded investors of a key FDA decision date, August 31st, for the drug deramiocel for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This drug is already in phase 3, and that trial is complete. On September 24th, they announced that they would submit it to the FDA for review, and on that news, the stock skyrocketed by 300%. A few weeks later, as often happens in biotech, they did a stock offering, which is why we always check how much cash they have, to avoid getting diluted by these movements of stock offerings. Anyway, we already know the efficacy data for this drug. On March 17th, they report that it reduced disease progression by 52% over 3 years. Duchenne muscular dystrophy already has several approved drugs on the market. None are fully effective. There are antisense oligonucleotides and also gene therapy, which is extremely expensive, you know. I've looked into the efficacy results of the competing drug that's already on the market. Of course, you can't make a direct comparisons as they use different outcome measures, but in both cases all patients continue to decline over time. The difference is that those on the treatment decline more slowly than the placebo group. That's a clear benefit. In both cases, the conclusion was that the treatment slows the progressions of the disease. Maybe in the future they could even try combining them. In any case, despite the efficacy data, the stock dropped 15%. But as you can see, it has more than recovered to pre-announcement levels. Capricor market cap is low, about 650 million, and even with the stock offering, the stock didn't collapse. These are clues combined with the efficacy data that suggest the FDA's opinion might be favorable. Now let's move on to Rezolute, which said it expects phase 3 results in December of 2025 for its innovative treatment for hyperinsulinism. Basically, this disease is the opposite of diabetes, and the company is aiming to block it using an antibody. This is their only molecule in the pipeline, and the results will likely have a huge impact on the share price. They already released positive phase 2 data back in 2022, showing a 75% reduction in hypoglycemia and at least 50% improvement in all patients. After that data, they did a stock offering, and a year later, they present more evidence and publish it in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is always a sign of confidence. This year, an independent agency confirmed that they won't need to expand their patient cohort, meaning they are on track to present final results by year-end. And preliminary reports already indicate that the treatment is generally safe and well tolerated. Okay, but there are existing treatments for this disease, but none are 100% effective. One of the most commonly used options has 71% efficacy rate. If we look at the chart, we can see that after the first efficacy results in 2022, the stock went up 21%. Then fell again after the stock offering. Later, when they published expand results in October 2023, the stock went down another 25%. And over time, it recovered very well. Despite the increased number of shares, it recovered quite well. Another positive signal. However, it's also true that Rezolute now has 400 million market cap, and the market for this disease isn't very large. You can see here that drug sales for this indication might exceed 200 million annually, but we are not talking about a major disease, so I'm not sure how long the company can sustain this valuation long term. Finally, a quick summary of the stocks I project. I've been researching Fortress Biotech because they have a drug approval date coming up for Menkes disease, but I would need to dig deeper into how much of the proceeds Fortress would actually keep, because the rights are split across multiple companies and I didn't have time to fully analyze that. I also took a look at BeliteBio due to their interim phase 3 data from the Dragon trial, but it wasn't clear for me on the efficacy data in the last conference. If you have more info on this, drop it in the comments. As for Anaptys, I already shared my thoughts on Twitter. I wasn't convinced by the data compared to placebo or compared to the competition. CRISPR also has major catalysis coming this year, but CRISPR is a giant company and it would require a whole episode to break it down. If you are interested in that, let me know in the comments. Sutro Therapeutics and Terns Therapeutics will present data on their obesity drug candidates. Personally, I think there is already too much competition in this space and I don't want to get involved in that molecules that are trying to do the same things. But that's just my personal opinion. Sutro Pharma has a good cash position and a catalyst in the second half of the year, when they plan to submit an investigational new drug application to the FDA to begin a clinical trial. That could be promising, but I don't think it's huge news either. And the last one, Maze Therapeutics, will also be presenting data that could be good, but the company has very little track record in the stock market, so according to my strategy, it feels too risky to get in for me. And that's all I've got for you today, folks. Feel free to criticize me, gently please, and let me know what you would like me to cover next. Thank you for watching and see you next video.